From the mayor with the sleeping pill pizza to the HOA board banning pets from wearing clothes. Welcome to Stories from the HOA, where I, Alex Fan, former investigative journalist turned reluctant radio host, will pull back the curtain on the most powerful mini-dictatorships in the neighborhood. Forget the flowery speeches and fake smiles. Today, we'll dive deep into fiery disputes, absurd rules, and the secrets that the HOA doesn't want you to know. The mic crackled, a sound I hadn't heard since I was dodging security guards outside the mayor's office. Pizza box in hand. Good times, relatively speaking. Welcome to Stories from the HOA, the only radio show brave or stupid enough to shine a light on the miniature dictatorships that govern our very lives, homeowners associations. I'm Alex Fan, your host, and as you might have guessed, I have a history. Let's just say I was a bit of a troublemaker in my past life as an investigative journalist. Remember the sleeping pill pizza scandal? Yeah, that was me. Turns out, slipping a subtle sedative into the city mayor's favorite pepperoni pie wasn't exactly considered ethical journalism. Who knew? Banned from every respectable news network in the state, I landed here at HO 87.3 FM. A station so local it practically breathes your neighbor's morning breath. But hey, every dog has its day, and I figured I'd just sniff out corruption elsewhere. The HOA felt like the next logical step. Now, for those lucky enough to live outside their jurisdiction, let me explain. The HOA is this organization. Supposedly, it's about maintaining property values and ensuring a harmonious community. In reality, it's a festering pit of petty squabbles, tyrannical rule enforcement, and enough bureaucratic red tape to strangle an octopus. They regulate everything: lawn height, the color of your mailbox, even the type of flowers you can plant. And the fines? Don't even get me started. You can be financially ruined for leaving your trash cans out for an extra hour. Absurd? Absolutely. But that's the HOA. Today, we're honored, and I use that word loosely, to have Harold Perkins, president of the Sunny Acres HOA, as our guest. Harold is a special breed, the perpetually smiling, eternally evasive politician of suburbia. He's been sitting on the Sunny Acres board since before I moved into the neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure he's been promising to fix the pothole on Elm Street for just as long. Welcome to the show, Harold, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. It's a pleasure to have you. Harold's smile widened, somehow managing to reach his eyes. The pleasure is all mine, Alex. Sunny Acres is all about transparency, and I'm thrilled to share our vision with the community. Oh, the transparency. You could see right through it like a brick wall. The interview started predictably. Harold spattered platitudes about community spirit and enhancing the beauty of the neighborhood. He talked about landscaping initiatives and community events, carefully avoiding any mention of the hefty HOA fees or the notorious incident involving Mrs. Davison's known collection. I lobbed softballs, letting him paint his picture of suburban paradise, all while my finger hovered over a button. The HOA, off the record button. Time for some reality. So, Harold, I said, my voice suddenly taking on a slightly sharper edge. Speaking of enhancing the beauty of the neighborhood, I understand there was an incident involving a flower pot in your vehicle a few months back. Harold's smile faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered. Yes, a minor mishap. Just a little bump in the road, so to speak. We all make mistakes, Alex. Luckily, the HOA was able to swiftly rectify the situation, ensuring the continued beauty of our sidewalks. Rectify the situation with HOA funds, I understand, I pressed, a smirk tugging at my lips. And wasn't there also a bit of a disagreement about sidewalk parking around the same time? Some might even say a heated argument with Mrs. Henderson? Harold's voice tightened. Those are isolated incidents. The HOA has strict regulations regarding parking to ensure the safety and accessibility of our streets. As for the flower pot, accidents happen. We're just grateful no one was hurt. I let him squirm for a few more seconds before delivering the final blow. And isn't it also true, Harold, that the Sunny Acres HOA has a rule against pets wearing clothes? A rule that, according to sources, was implemented after you witnessed Mr. Henderson's chihuahua in a tiny sailor suit? The studio went silent, save for the hum of the equipment. Harold's face had lost all color. That is a gross misrepresentation of our policy. We simply encourage responsible pet ownership. He was sweating. Glorious. The sweet smell of cornered HOA president. As I wrapped up the interview, feeling a surge of that old journalistic adrenaline. The phone lines lit up. Among the usual callers, one stood out. A voice, raspy and brimming with barely concealed glee, cut through the noise. "This is Agnes," the voice cackled. "Agnes Miller, of 14 Willow Creek Lane. And let me tell you, that Harold Perkins is a bigger crook than a politician in a sleeping pill pizza scandal. I've been saying for years that he's been using HOA funds for his own nefarious purposes." Mrs. Agnes, I quickly learned, was the HOA's #1 troll, a self-proclaimed defender of truth and possibly sanity. She seemed to know everything about everyone in Sunny Acres, and she wasn't afraid to share it. The show ended on a high note, or at least a high-pitched cackle. As I was packing up, my phone buzzed. An anonymous text message flashed across the screen. "Stop messing with the HOA." Well, that was just getting interesting. Stories from the HOA was officially a thing. People were listening. People were talking. And, judging by the anonymous text, some people were getting nervous. Good. Today's guests were the entire board of the Echo Ridge HOA, a group that described themselves as dedicated managers on their official website, but who I suspected were more akin to a pack of wolves guarding a particularly lucrative patch of suburban real estate. They were here to discuss their latest project, the eco-friendly electric vehicle parking lot. As the board members, a collection of vaguely disgruntled-looking individuals in sensible cardigans settled into their chairs. They launched into a rehearsed spiel about sustainability, reduced carbon emissions, and the importance of embracing the future. They painted a picture of a parking lot bathed in the soft glow of energy-efficient LED lights, filled with gleaming electric vehicles silently charging, all contributing to a healthier, greener Echo Ridge. "It's truly a revolutionary project," proclaimed Mr. Henderson, the board's treasurer, his voice dripping with self-importance. "Echo Ridge is leading the way in sustainable community living." I nodded along, playing the part of the attentive interviewer. But underneath the surface, my journalistic instincts were tingling. Something felt off. The way they kept repeating the same buzzwords, the almost too perfect smiles, the lack of genuine enthusiasm. It all felt staged. "So," I said, injecting a note of casual inquiry into my voice, "how did you decide on the location for the electric parking lot? I understand it's going to be right next to the community center." Mrs. Johnson, the board secretary, cleared her throat. "The location was chosen after careful consideration of several factors, including accessibility, proximity to amenities, and optimal exposure to sunlight for solar panel integration." More buzzwords. I needed something real, and I pressed. Was there any particular reason why the contract for installing the charging stations was awarded to Sparky's Electric Vehicles? I seemed to recall reading somewhere that let me see. "Oh yes, Mr. Thompson." I glanced at the board member furthest from the microphone, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Your cousin owns Sparky's, doesn't he?" The room fell silent. Mr. Thompson's face flushed crimson. Mrs. Johnson shot him a look that could curdle milk. He stammered, "Well, yes, he does. But the bidding process was completely fair and transparent. Sparky's offered the best price and the most reliable technology, and the most reliable opportunity to showcase their vehicles to potential buyers. Perhaps," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm, "isn't it true that a significant portion of the parking lot will be used as a display area for Sparky's latest models?" He opened his mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. Suddenly, the studio lights flickered. The microphones buzzed ominously. Then, silence. The signal had cut out. "What the?" I exclaimed, staring in disbelief at the control panel. The engineer, a harried-looking man named Gary, rushed into the studio, fiddling with wires. "Technical difficulties, Alex," he said apologetically. "We're trying to fix it." Technical difficulties? During the most interesting part of the interview, I raised an eyebrow, suspicion clouding my mind. This felt too convenient. Sabotage, maybe? While Gary wrestled with the equipment, the Echo Ridge board members seized the opportunity to make a hasty retreat, muttering excuses about prior commitments. They practically sprinted out of the studio, leaving me alone with my suspicions and a lingering sense of frustration. Back in my office, I slammed my fist on the desk. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had deliberately pulled the plug on the show. But who? And why? Time for the HOA. Off the record segment, I replayed the last few minutes of the interview, focusing on Mr. Thompson's stammering admission, the subtle shifts in the other board members' body language. It was all there, etched in the digital record. A pattern of deception, a whiff of corruption. I pieced together the fragments. Thompson's cousin's struggling electric car dealership, the prime location of the parking lot, the suspiciously rapid approval of the project. It all pointed to a sweetheart deal, a thinly veiled attempt to funnel public funds into private pockets. Just as I was formulating a plan to investigate further, the phone rang. It was Mrs. Agnes. "Alex, my dear," she wheezed, her voice crackling with static. "I knew it. I knew something shady was going on with that parking lot nonsense. You won't believe what I overheard at the community center last week." She proceeded to recount a whispered conversation she'd overheard between Mr. Henderson and Mr. Thompson, a conversation that confirmed my suspicions about the rigged bidding process and the secret agreement with Sparky's electric vehicles. And Agnes added conspiratorially, "I heard a rumor that the approval for the project was pushed through with a forged signature on the environmental impact assessment. Apparently, someone wasn't happy about the potential disruption to the local bat population. Bats, forged signatures." This was getting better and better, or worse and worse, depending on your perspective. As I hung up the phone, the weight of the situation settled upon me. The HOA letters weren't just about petty rules and flowerpot squabbles. They were capable of something much darker, something more sinister. And I had just scratched the surface. The sudden blackout during the Echo Ridge interview was more than just a technical difficulty. It was a warning shot, a clear indication that someone was willing to go to considerable lengths to silence me. And that made me even more determined to dig deeper. My first stop was the station's tech booth. Gary, the engineer, looked even more frazzled than usual, surrounded by tangled wires and blinking lights. "Hey Gary," I said, leaning against the doorway. "About yesterday, that technical difficulty. Everything okay?" Gary jumped, nearly knocking over a cup of lukewarm coffee. "Oh, hey Alex. Yeah, everything's fine. Just a glitch. Happens sometimes, you know." He avoided eye contact, fiddling nervously with a screwdriver. A glitch that conveniently occurred right when I started asking uncomfortable questions. I raised an eyebrow. "Come on, Gary. You can be honest with me." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, Alex, I can't say anything. You know how it is." "No, I don't." "Tell me, Gary, was someone messing with the signal?" He hesitated for a moment, then glanced around the room, as if afraid of being overheard. "Okay, look, technically, the audio board is managed by Kevin, our intern." He lowered his voice to a whisper. "I've never seen him touch that equipment during a live show, but he did look stressed afterwards." Kevin, a fresh-faced kid barely out of high school. Or something more? The next morning, I found Kevin hunched over his desk in the break room, nervously scrolling through his phone. He practically jumped out of his skin when I approached. "Kevin," I said, trying to sound friendly but firm, "can I have a word?" He looked like he was about to bolt. Sure, Mr. Fan. What's up?" "About the blackout during yesterday's show, Gary mentioned you were working the audio board." His face paled. "Yeah, I was. But I swear, it wasn't my fault. It just cut out. Did anyone ask you to adjust the sound?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. Finally, he blurted out, "Okay, fine. Someone gave me money to mess with the levels." "Money? Who?" He swallowed hard. "I don't know. They contacted me online. Said they'd pay me if I made sure the audio glitched at a certain point during the show. How much did they pay you? $500, he mumbled, looking ashamed. $500. Cheap? Someone was willing to pay peanuts to silence me. Do you have any idea who this person was? Kevin shook his head. No. They used a fake email address and paid me through a prepaid debit card. I never met them in person. He was clearly terrified, a kid caught in something way over his head. I suspected he was telling the truth, or at least, as much of the truth as he knew. He was just a pawn in a bigger game. That night, I dedicated the HOA, off the record segment, to Kevin. Was Kevin just a desperate kid looking to make a quick buck? I asked my listeners. Or was he a scapegoat, a convenient patsy set up to take the fall for someone else? The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the murky middle. I replayed the audio clip of Kevin's confession, dissecting every word, every hesitation. I invited listeners to call in with any information they might have about the incident, promising anonymity to anyone who came forward. As the segment progressed, I felt a familiar wave of frustration wash over me. I was chasing shadows, following breadcrumbs, but I needed more. I needed someone on the inside, someone who could help me connect the dots. That's when Linda walked in. Linda was a young, ambitious journalist from the local college paper, the Community Chronicle. She'd been following my work on the HOA, and she'd reached out, offering her assistance. Mr. Fan, she said, her eyes shining with determination, I've been doing some digging of my own, and I think I can help you. A fresh pair of eyes. Someone eager to fight the good fight. Maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what I needed. The next day, I arrived at the station to find chaos. Kevin's desk was empty. His computer was gone. He had vanished. Where's Kevin? I asked Gary, my stomach sinking. He got fired, Gary said, avoiding my gaze. Station management said he violated company policy. They told him to pack his things and leave. Now, fired, just like that. Someone was covering their tracks, and they were doing it fast. I looked at Linda, her face grim. Looks like the game just got a whole lot more serious, I said. The digital ballad of betrayal had only just begun, and someone, somewhere, was writing the lyrics. Kevin's disappearance solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about petty HOA squabbles anymore. There was something bigger at play, something rotten festering beneath the manicured lawns and meticulously maintained flower beds. And it all seemed to be connected to the eco-friendly electric vehicle parking lot and the Echo Ridge HOA. Okay, Linda, I said, spreading a map of Echo Ridge across my desk. Let's follow the money. We know the parking lot project was rigged. Someone profited, and Kevin got paid to silence us. Let's see if we can find out where that money originated. Linda, ever the diligent researcher, had already compiled a list of the contractors involved in the parking lot project, along with the financial records of the Echo Ridge HOA. She pointed to a recurring payment that stood out. Look at this, Alex. A series of substantial payments from the Emergency Repair Fund to a company called Zenith Consulting Group, she said, her finger tracing a line on the spreadsheet. Zenith Consulting Group, I frowned. Sounds vague. Exactly. They claim to specialize in feng shui consultation and harmonious design solutions. I burst out laughing. Feng shui? Seriously? They're using HOA funds for feng shui? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous and suspiciously convenient, Linda countered. According to their website, Zenith Consulting Group is a one-person operation run by a woman named Madame Evangeline, and her address leads to a P.O. box in a strip mall. We pulled up Madame Evangeline's website. It was a garish explosion of red and gold, filled with stock photos of tranquil gardens and mystical symbols. The testimonials were suspiciously vague, praising Madame Evangeline's harmonious energy and her ability to align the chakras of the community. This has to be a front, I said, shaking my head. A way to funnel money without raising too many eyebrows. We dug deeper, tracing the connections between Zenith Consulting Group and the Echo Ridge HOA. It wasn't easy. Madame Evangeline had done her best to cover her tracks, but Linda was relentless. She spent hours poring over public records, searching for any hint of a connection. Finally, she found something. Alex, look at this, she said, her voice tight with excitement. The P.O. Box address for Zenith Consulting Group is registered to a company owned by Richard Miller. Richard Miller? I repeated, a flicker of recognition in my mind. Wait, isn't he the city commissioner? That's right, the same Richard Miller who sits on the City Planning Commission and has the power to approve or deny development projects in Echo Ridge. Bingo! The puzzle pieces were starting to fall into place. The rigged bidding process, the stolen money, the convenient feng shui consultation, it all led back to Commissioner Miller. We spent the next few hours mapping out the connections. Miller owned the company. That controlled the P.O. Box, which was used as the address for the sham consulting firm that was receiving payments from the Echo Ridge HOA. It was a classic case of money laundering, disguised as mystical mumbo-jumbo. That evening, I dedicated the HOA off-the-record segment to the suspicious payments and the connection to Commissioner Miller. Feng Shui, I scoffed into the microphone. Apparently, the best way to achieve harmonious community living is to siphon off funds from the emergency repair fund and funnel them into the pockets of corrupt politicians. Who knew? I laid out the facts, presenting the evidence we had gathered, careful to avoid making any direct accusations, but leaving no doubt in my listeners' minds that something was deeply wrong. As the segment ended, the phone lines lit up. Among the callers was Mrs. Agnes, her voice dripping with outrage. I knew it, she cackled. That Richard Miller is a scoundrel. I've always suspected him of being up to no good. Did you know he's an active member of the local chess club? The chess club, I repeated, surprised. What's that got to do with anything? Everything, Agnes insisted. The chess club is where all the power brokers in this town hang out. They make deals, they plot schemes, they manipulate the system. Trust me, Alex. Richard Miller's involvement in the chess club is no coincidence. Chess club, feng shui, it was all starting to feel increasingly bizarre. But in the world of HOA corruption, I was learning anything was possible. As I signed off for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were getting closer to the truth. But I also knew that we were stepping into dangerous territory. Commissioner Miller was a powerful man, and he wouldn't hesitate to protect his interests. We had to be careful. We had to be smart. And we had to be prepared for anything. Agnes's tip about Commissioner Miller's involvement in the chess club was bizarre, but intriguing. I'd learned by now to trust her instincts, however eccentric they might be. If the chess club was a hub of backroom deals and political maneuvering, it was worth investigating. Linda and I spent the next day trying to track down information about the club. It was surprisingly difficult. The Greater Echo Ridge Chess Enthusiasts was a low-profile organization with no website, no social media presence, and no publicly available membership list. It operated in the shadows, a hidden world within the quiet confines of our suburban community. Finally, Linda managed to get in touch with a former member, a disgruntled retiree who had left the club after a dispute over tournament rules. He agreed to speak with us on the condition of anonymity. The chess club, he whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of nostalgia and resentment. It's not just about chess. It's about power. The guys who run that club, they're the real movers and shakers in this town. They control everything. He told us that the club was led by a man named George, a wealthy businessman with a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. George had been the president of the club for decades, and he wielded immense influence within the community. George and Miller, they're like this, the former member said, holding up two intertwined fingers. They're inseparable. They've been playing chess together for years. They trust each other implicitly. We tracked down George's address and decided to pay him a visit. His house was a sprawling mansion nestled on a secluded hilltop, overlooking the entire town. It was a testament to his wealth and influence, a symbol of the power he held within the community. We rang the doorbell, and after a moment, George himself answered the door. He was a tall, imposing man with a sharp gaze and a refined demeanor. He wore a silk dressing gown and held a pipe in his hand, radiating an air of old-world sophistication. "Mr. George," I asked, extending my hand. "I'm Alex Fan, and this is Linda. We're doing a story on the chess club. George raised an eyebrow. The chess club? I'm not sure what's so interesting about a group of people who enjoy playing chess. We're interested in the club's role in the community, I said, and in your connection to Commissioner Miller. George's expression hardened. I'm not sure I understand what you're implying. Richard Miller is a respected member of the community and a friend. We play chess together. That's all there is to it. We talked for a while, but George remained evasive, deflecting our questions with practiced skill. He was a master of deflection, a chess player who knew how to anticipate every move. As we left his mansion, I felt a chill run down my spine. George was more than just a chess enthusiast. He was a powerful, dangerous man, and he was clearly protecting something. That evening, I dedicated the HOA off the record segment to George and his role in the chess club. Is George just a harmless chess player? I asked my listeners. Or is he the kingpin of a network of corruption that extends to the highest levels of our local government? The answer, I suspect, is somewhere in between. He is the chess king in the community. I speculated about George's potential involvement in the money laundering scheme, hinting at the possibility that he was the mastermind behind the whole operation. While I was speaking, Linda was doing some more digging. She scoured the internet, searching for any information about George's past, and she found something that made my blood run cold. Alex, she said, her voice trembling, I found something on George. Something big. He had some very shady business dealings overseas and was associated with a notorious gambling ring. Gambling. Illegal activities. George was more than just a corrupt businessman. He was a criminal, and he was connected to Commissioner Miller. As I signed off for the night, I knew that we were getting closer to the truth than ever before. But I also knew that we were in grave danger. We were messing with powerful people, people who wouldn't hesitate to silence us if we got too close. As we walked to our cars, I noticed a dark sedan parked across the street, its engine idling. Two men were sitting inside, their faces obscured by the tinted windows. They were watching us. We were being followed. The price of truth, I realized, was about to become very high. The feeling of being watched hung heavy in the air. We were definitely on someone's radar, and that someone wasn't happy. Linda and I knew we had to be careful, but we also knew we couldn't back down. We were too close to the truth to turn away now. We decided to shift our focus, at least temporarily, away from George and Commissioner Miller and back to the HOA itself. We needed to find more concrete evidence of corruption, something that would be harder to dismiss as mere speculation. Let's go back to Echo Ridge, I said to Linda. There has to be something else going on there, something we've missed. We started digging through the HOAS records again, searching for anything that seemed out of place. After hours of sifting through invoices and meeting minutes, Linda stumbled upon something interesting. Look at this, Alex, she said, pointing to a section of the HOAS landscaping budget. There's a line item for replacement of damaged fencing that's ridiculously high. And all the fencing is being sourced from a single company, Elite Oak Co. I frowned. Elite Oak Co. Sounds expensive. It is. Their oak is imported from some exclusive forest in Europe. The price per panel is double what you'd pay for locally sourced wood. Double? I exclaimed. Why would they be using imported oak when there are perfectly good trees right here? We looked into Elite Oak Co. and discovered that it was a relatively new company, owned by, you guessed it, Harold Perkins, the perpetually smiling president of Sunny Acres HOA and the bane of Mrs. Davison's known collection. Of course, I muttered. It always comes back to Harold. This was textbook corruption, a clear conflict of interest, a blatant abuse of power. Harold Perkins was using his position as HOA president to enrich himself by forcing residents to purchase overpriced imported oak from his own company. That evening, I dedicated the HOA off the record segment to the scandal of the imported oak. Apparently, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, the only way to maintain property values in Echo Ridge is to surround your homes with ridiculously expensive imported oak fencing. And who benefits from this ridiculous requirement? Why, none other than our old friend Harold Perkins, the smiling face of suburban tyranny. I mocked the absurdity of the situation, ridiculing the HOAS justification for using imported oak and exposing Harold Perkins' blatant self-dealing. As the segment progressed, the phone lines went crazy. Residents of Echo Ridge were furious. They had been suspicious of the high cost of the fencing for years, but they had never been able to prove anything. Now, thanks to stories from the HOA, the truth was finally out. But the best was yet to come. As I was wrapping up the show, Mrs. Agnes called in, her voice filled with righteous indignation. "Alex, my dear," she cackled, "I've had enough of Harold Perkins and his imported oak nonsense. I'm organizing a protest." "A protest?" I repeated, intrigued. "What kind of protest?" "We're going to gather in front of Harold Perkins' house tomorrow morning, with signs that say any wood is fine if it's cheap. We're going to show him that we're not going to be ripped off anymore." The idea was brilliant. I could picture it now. A group of angry residents picketing Harold Perkins' house, armed with signs in righteous fury. It was the perfect visual, the perfect symbol of a community's growing discontent with the HOA's corruption. The next morning, Linda and I drove to Harold Perkins' house. We arrived to find a scene of utter chaos. Dozens of residents were gathered in front of his house, waving signs and chanting slogans. Mrs. Agnes, dressed in a bright red dress and a matching hat, was leading the charge, her voice booming through a megaphone. "Any wood is fine if it's cheap," she shouted, her voice cracking with passion. "We won't be ripped off anymore." Harold Perkins emerged from his house, his face red with anger. He tried to reason with the protesters, but they wouldn't listen. They were too angry, too fed up with his lies and his greed. As the protests raged on, something even more remarkable happened. Residents began taking matters into their own hands. One by one, they started sabotaging their oak fences, sawing off panels, painting them in garish colors, and replacing them with cheaper, locally sourced wood. It was a rebellion, a suburban uprising against the tyranny of the HOA. As I watched the scene unfold, I felt a surge of hope. The community was finally waking up. They were finally fighting back, and stories from the HOA was helping to lead the charge. The imported oak scandal was the spark that lit the fuse. The residents of Echo Ridge and Sunny Acres were finally realizing the extent of the HOA's corruption, and they weren't going to take it anymore. The protests, the fence sabotage, the growing sense of rebellion, it all created a climate of intense pressure on Harold Perkins and the other board members. And then, the dominoes started to fall. One morning, I received a call from a source at the local police department. He told me that Harold Perkins had been arrested. The charge? Taking bribes. Bribes? I repeated, stunned. What kind of bribes? Nail salon discount coupons, the source said, barely suppressing a laugh. Apparently, a local nail salon owner was giving Perkins free manicures and pedicures in exchange for favorable treatment from the HOA. Nail salon discount coupons, the weapon of choice for corrupt suburban officials. It was so ridiculous, it was almost unbelievable. I rushed to the station and broke the news on stories from the HOA. The phones went wild. Listeners were in disbelief, amused, and outraged all at the same time. Harold Perkins, I announced, my voice barely containing my laughter, has been brought down by nail salon discount coupons. It seems the price of corruption is sometimes a perfectly polished pedicure. The story quickly went viral, spreading across social media and even making national news. Harold Perkins became a laughingstock, a symbol of the petty, absurd corruption that plagues so many HOA letters. But the costly manicure, as the scandal became known, was more than just a joke. It was a turning point. It showed that even the smallest acts of corruption could have serious consequences. And it sent a clear message to other HOA board members, you're not untouchable. Following Harold Perkins' arrest, other board members began to crack under the pressure. Several resigned, while others came under investigation for various offenses. The domino effect was in full swing. That evening, I dedicated the HOA, off the record segment, to the unraveling of the Echo Ridge HOA. It seems, I said, that the entire house of cards is collapsing. One by one, the corrupt officials are being exposed and brought to justice. And it's all thanks to the courage of the residents who are finally standing up and fighting back. Linda, meanwhile, had been digging deeper into the nail salon connection. She discovered that the owner of the nail salon, a woman named Tiffany, had a close relationship with several other officials in the city, including Commissioner Miller. "Alex," she said, "I think I know how Harold Perkins was able to get away with so much for so long. He was bribing other officials using beauty coupons. And the beauty salon was just a small part of a much larger bribery scheme. Beauty coupons, feng shui, chess clubs. The web of corruption was growing more bizarre and intricate with each passing day. But the most important thing was that it was finally being exposed. The residents of Echo Ridge were finally free from the tyranny of the HOA, and stories from the HOA had played a crucial role in their liberation. As I signed off for the night, I felt a sense of satisfaction, but also a sense of unease. We had won a major victory, but I knew that the fight was far from over. There were still more corrupt officials to expose, more injustices to correct, and I knew that those officials wouldn't go down without a fight. With Harold Perkins behind bars and other corrupt board members scrambling for cover, you'd think the reign of terror in Echo Ridge would be over. You'd be wrong. Like a hydra, cut off one head, and more ridiculous rules sprang up in its place. The remaining, desperate, and probably equally corrupt HOA members decided to double down on the absurdity. Their next move? Mandatory HOA pride decals. I kid you not. The HOA announced that all residents who wanted to plant bougainvillea, and only bougainvillea, would have to prominently display a sticker on their front door or mailbox stating, "I'm proud of the HOA. Bougainvillea, a beautiful, vibrant flower, held hostage by a petty, tyrannical HOA." It was the perfect storm of suburban madness. The response was, predictably, swift and hilarious. Residents, who had already shown their willingness to sabotage oak fences, weren't about to let a simple sticker dictate their floral choices or their level of wealth. Any pride for the HOA. The first act of defiance was simple, upside-down stickers. Houses across Echo Ridge sported declarations of pride that were literally turned on their heads. Then came the graffiti. "I'm proud of the HOA" was quickly transformed into "I'm scared of the HOA." I'm mildly annoyed by the HOA, and my personal favorite, the HOA is run by squirrels. But the best was yet to come. A group of residents, led by a particularly rebellious teenager named Emily, created a parody sticker that perfectly captured the community's collective trauma. It read, "I'm proud of the HOA trauma. I'm proud of the HOA trauma." Stickers spread like wildfire, popping up on doors, mailboxes, and even car bumpers. They became a symbol of resistance, a badge of honor for those who had endured the HOA's reign of terror. That evening, I dedicated the HOA, off the record segment, to the sticker rebellion. The Echo Ridge HOA, I declared, has reached peak absurdity. Mandatory pride stickers to plant bougainvillea? It's like something out of a dystopian novel, only funnier. I celebrated the creativity and courage of the residents who were fighting back against the HOA's ridiculous rules. I interviewed Emily, the mastermind behind the trauma sticker, who explained that it was a way to express the community's shared experience of being subjected to the HOA's arbitrary and often cruel regulations. "We've all been through so much," she said. "The fines, the pointless rules, the constant harassment. It's left us all a little traumatized. And the trauma sticker is a way to acknowledge that." As the segment continued, the phone lines lit up with calls from residents sharing their own HOA horror stories. It was clear that the sticker rebellion had tapped into something deep, something raw, something that resonated with people on a visceral level. Linda, ever the resourceful journalist, had been investigating the origins of the "I'm Proud of the HOA" sticker campaign. She discovered that it was the brainchild of a newly appointed HOA board member, a real estate developer named Mr. Davenport, who had close ties to Commissioner Miller. "Alex," she said, "I think this sticker thing is more than just a publicity stunt. I think it's a way for them to identify who's loyal to the HOA and who isn't. They're trying to create a database of dissenters." That made sense. The HOA was trying to consolidate its power, to silence opposition by identifying and targeting those who dared to challenge its authority. As I signed off for the night, Linda told me she'd uncovered an underground anti-HOA network. I got contacted by someone from a group called Residents Against Ridiculous Edicts, she said. Apparently, they are already planning a strategic counter-campaign to bring down the HOA, and they want to work with us. It seemed our fight for suburban freedom was attracting allies. And I'm proud of the HOA trauma. Sticker Rebellion was a glorious display of suburban defiance, but it also served as a stark reminder that the fight was far from over. The HOA, wounded but not defeated, was doubling down on its tyrannical tactics, and we needed to be one step ahead. That's why I decided to get creative. I needed access to the HOA's closed-door meetings, the gatherings where they hatched their ridiculous rules and plotted their nefarious schemes. But getting inside was proving impossible. Security was tight, and anyone suspected of being a dissenter was immediately barred. Then, inspiration struck. The HOA, in a desperate attempt to improve its public image, had started handing out branded merchandise, mugs, pens, and thermoses. A thermos, a seemingly innocuous object, but one that could hold the key to unlocking the HOA's secrets. I bought one of the thermoses, a sleek, stainless steel container emblazoned with the words Sunny Acres, a community to be proud of. Ironically, very few residents were actually proud, stickers notwithstanding. Then, I did what any self-respecting investigative journalist would do. I gutted it and installed a high-quality, long-range microphone, transforming it into a state-of-the-art listening device. The plan was simple: plant the talking thermos in the HOA meeting room and record everything. Linda, with her knack for infiltrating seemingly impenetrable organizations, managed to slip the thermos into a board member's briefcase during a community event. Success! The next day, I sat in my studio, nervously monitoring the audio feed. The sound quality was surprisingly good. I could hear the rustling of papers, the clinking of coffee cups, and then the voices. The HOA board members were gathered, and they were talking about me. Fan, Mr. Davenport, the sticker campaign mastermind, said with a sneer. He's becoming a real problem. We need to find a way to shut him down. His radio show is stirring up trouble, Mrs. Henderson, the infamous gnome-hating HOA member, chimed in. People are starting to question everything we do. Maybe we should sue him for defamation, someone suggested. Or maybe we should just make his life difficult, Mr. Thompson, the electric car cousin, added with a sinister chuckle. They spent the next hour mocking me, my radio show, and my Pete's-related past. They call me a troublemaker, a conspiracy theorist, and a failed journalist desperate for attention. It was all incredibly childish and petty, but also deeply revealing. They were worried. They were feeling the pressure, and they were plotting their revenge. That evening, I dedicated the HOA off-the-record segment to the secret recording. Tonight, I announced, we're giving you a glimpse inside the inner sanctum of the Echo Ridge HOA. We're letting you hear, firsthand, the thoughts and feelings of the people who are trying to control your lives. I played snippets of the recording, highlighting the most outrageous and incriminating statements. I let my listeners hear the HOA board members mocking them, dismissing their concerns, and plotting against them. The reaction was explosive. The phone lines melted down. Social media went into overdrive. Residents were furious. They felt betrayed, insulted, and more determined than ever to fight back. But I knew that my actions had consequences. The HOA would be furious. They would know that I had planted a bug in their meeting room, and they would be out for blood. I had just escalated the war with the HOA to a whole new level. The fallout from the talking thermos was immediate and brutal. The HOA, publicly humiliated and privately enraged, launched a full-scale vendetta against me and my family. First came the new rules. Overnight, the HOA implemented a series of absurdly specific and punitive regulations, clearly designed to target me. Rule for 7B: all vehicles parked on the street must be facing the same direction as the traffic flow, and no further than 6 inches from the curb. My wife's car, always parked slightly askew, was immediately ticketed. Rule 5-A: all lawns must be mowed to a height of precisely 0.5 inches, and all weeds must be removed by hand. My previously acceptable lawn became a constant source of fines. Rule 6-1C: All outdoor decorations, including holiday lights, must be pre-approved by the HOA Architectural Committee at least 30 days in advance. My Halloween display was deemed too macabre in order to be removed immediately. The harassment wasn't just limited to petty fines. I started receiving anonymous phone calls in the middle of the night, with nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. My mailbox was vandalized with spray paint. My kids were bullied at school by the children of HOA board members. It was a relentless campaign of intimidation, designed to make my life as miserable as possible. That evening, I dedicated the HOA off-the-record segment to my personal war with the HOA. They want to silence me, I said, my voice filled with anger and frustration. They want to make me pay for exposing their corruption, but I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to let them win. I described the harassment I was facing, the fines, the vandalism, the threats. I didn't hold back. I wanted my listeners to understand the extent of the HOA's desperation, the lengths they were willing to go to in order to protect their power. While I was speaking, the phone lines lit up with calls of support from residents who had also been targeted by the HOA. They shared their own stories of harassment and intimidation, their own experiences of being subjected to the HOA's arbitrary and often cruel rules. The outpouring of solidarity was overwhelming. It reminded me that I wasn't alone in this fight, that there were countless other people who were suffering at the hands of the HOA. But the calls didn't stop there. As I wrapped up the show, Mrs. Agnes called in, her voice filled with urgency. "Alex, my dear," she said, "I have some new information. Something big." I overheard a conversation between Commissioner Miller and George at the chess club. "They were talking about you." "What were they saying?" I asked, my heart pounding. "They were saying that you were getting too close, that you needed to be taken care of." "Taken care of," I repeated, a chill running down my spine. "Yes," Agnes said. "They were talking about finding a way to discredit you, to ruin your reputation, to silence you for good." Then Linda called. "Alex, I received an anonymous envelope in the mail. It contains copies of HOA election records showing widespread evidence of tampering. Ballots were forged, votes were miscounted, the whole thing was rigged. Election tampering, Agnes's intel. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a far-reaching conspiracy that extended beyond the HOA and into the highest levels of local government." As I signed off for the night, I received a text message on my phone. It was from an unknown number. It read, "You're playing a dangerous game, fan. Stop now, or you'll regret it." The threat was clear. The stakes had just been raised. The direct threat was a punch to the gut. Suddenly, this wasn't just about fighting corruption or exposing HOA absurdity. It was about my family, my job, my safety. The HOA and its allies were playing dirty, and I wasn't sure I could protect the people I loved while continuing to expose their secrets. The pressure was immense. My wife was terrified. My kids were scared. The constant harassment was taking its toll on all of us. I found myself second-guessing every decision, questioning whether the fight was worth the risk. Sleep became a luxury. Every creak of the house, every passing car sent a jolt of fear through me. I knew the HOA was capable of anything. I had a tough decision to make. Could I continue to fight this battle, knowing the potential consequences for my loved ones? Or did I need to step back, to prioritize their safety, even if it meant abandoning the fight for justice? The weight of the world felt like it was crushing me. I spent days wrestling with my conscience, torn between my commitment to the truth and my responsibility to my family. Finally, I made a decision. It was the hardest decision I'd ever had to make. That evening, I sat in the studio, the familiar microphone looming before me. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't going to expose any more secrets. I wasn't going to call out any more corrupt officials. Tonight, I was going to say goodbye. "Good evening," I said, my voice heavy with emotion. "This is Alex Fan, and this is Stories from the HOA. For the past few months, I've been shining a light on the often absurd, sometimes corrupt world of homeowners associations. But tonight, I'm announcing that I'll be taking a break from the show." I paused, taking a deep breath. The truth is, this fight has come at a cost that my family and I can no longer afford to pay. I've received threats, my family has been harassed, and it's clear that continuing this fight would put them in danger. I continued, I believe in the power of truth, but I also believe that protecting my loved ones is my top priority. So, for their sake, I'm stepping back. I'm sorry to those of you who were counting on me to continue this fight. I hope you understand. The phone lines were silent. I knew that my listeners were disappointed, angry, even betrayed. I had abandoned them, left them to fend for themselves against the HOA's tyranny. But then, a call came through. It was a resident of Echo Ridge, a woman named Sarah. Mr. Fan, she said, her voice trembling. I understand why you're doing this, but please don't think that your efforts were in vain. You opened our eyes. You gave us the courage to fight back, and we're not going to give up now. Other calls followed, all echoing the same sentiment. My listeners were disappointed, but they weren't defeated. They were determined to continue the fight, even without me. And then, Linda walked into the studio, her face beaming with determination. Don't worry, Alex, she said. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep the show going. I'm going to continue exposing the HOA's corruption. I'm going to carry the torch. A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't abandoning the fight entirely. I was just passing the torch to someone else. Someone who was equally passionate and equally committed to the truth. I knew that Linda was ready for this. She was a talented journalist, a fearless investigator, and a true believer in the power of community action. Thank you, Linda, I said, my voice choked with emotion. I know you'll do a great job. I looked at the listeners, their voices ringing in my ears. My final scene. I packed up my belongings, said goodbye to Gary, and drove out of the neighborhood. As I drove away, I felt a pang of regret, a sense of unfinished business. But I also felt a sense of hope. I knew that I had sparked something real, something powerful, something that would continue to burn long after I was gone. I left my old life behind, knowing that I had made a difference. I left, believing that Linda and the community I helped ignite would carry the torch, and that truth, ultimately, would prevail. I was proud and a little bit traumatized, but mostly, I was proud.